When the fire went out at midnight, most would think it was the end. The cold pressed in sharp as stone, swallowing every breath. But for the tribes of the north, that moment was only the beginning. No electricity, no blankets from the store, no furnace humming in the dark. And yet, they endured. They slept through nights that froze rivers solid, when the air itself could burn your lungs at minus 30 degrees Celsius. They buried embers under ash, wrapped warmth in hides, turned earth smoke and faith into tools for survival. In this story, you'll see how they lived when the fire died, and how their ancient ways might still outlast ours, because sometimes silence keeps you alive. When the fire went out at midnight, the earth turned cold beneath them, the kind of cold that creeps slow from the ground up until even your breath feels heavy. But the tribes of the north, they didn't fear it. They had learned something the modern world forgot, that the earth itself can keep you alive. The Dakota, the Cree, the Ojibwe, they knew how to make a bed out of frozen soil. Not soft, not comfortable, but warm enough to see the dawn. First, they dug a shallow hollow, wide enough for a body to curl into. They laid down layers of dry moss, pine needles, and fur. Then came the secret stones warmed beside the fire, still glowing faintly red, rolled into the pit and buried under soil. A thin cover of leaves, then hide, then sleep. As the fire above faded to ash, the warmth below rose like a slow breath. The ground became a silent furnace, radiating steady heat for hours. In the dead of night, when the air reached minus 30 degrees Celsius, their bodies rested while frost gathered quietly above them. The earth was their blanket, the dirt, their ally. They didn't fight the cold, they listened to it. They learned how it moved, how it stole, how it could be tamed. That's what survival really was, not defiance, but cooperation, not conquering nature, but understanding it. Archaeologists later found traces of these insulated pit-scarred stones, layers of moss turned black from heat, proof that knowledge was not lost to time, only buried waiting. And maybe that's the lesson buried there too, that warmth doesn't always burn bright. Sometimes it hides beneath your feet, waiting for the ones who still know how to feel the ground breathe. Warmth. Reborn. When the fire went out at midnight, they turned to each other. The cold moved through the teepee, like smoke, quiet, patient, alive. It slipped beneath the hides, bit through layers of fur, and tested every breath. The Dakota and the Cree knew this moment well. No blanket lasts forever. No fire burns without rest. But the warmth of a heartbeat, that endures. They gathered close, not out of comfort, but survival. Children were placed at the center, small and fragile, where every breath counted. Around them, mothers and fathers formed a living wall. Elders took the edge, shielding the young from the wind's teeth. Back to back, shoulder to shoulder, under the heavy hide, they became one, a breathing circle, a fire made of flesh and faith. Minutes passed, the air changed, frost melted from their hair. The warmth within that circle rose nearly 10 degrees above the frozen night outside. Their hearts became the coals, their breath the rising smoke. They didn't fight the cold, they shared it, moved it, turned it into life. At minus 30 degrees Celsius, that small circle meant everything. In such silence, loneliness could kill faster than frostbite. But here, every whisper, every sigh, every pulse was proof that they were still alive. Later stories told by the fire would recall these nights, how a tribe became a single body, how warmth came not from wood or stone, but from touch. Archaeologists found fur rings darkened by age and ash, the trace of where the circle once slept. We think we've mastered warmth with walls, with heaters, with buttons and switches, but they knew something deeper. That true warmth begins not in flame, but in closeness, in the space where two heartbeats meet and refuse to fade. Warmth. Reborn. When the fire went out at midnight, the world turned dark, but not dead. The Dakota and Cree never truly let the flame die, they simply let it sleep. Out there in a night that could fall to minus 30 degrees Celsius, a living fire was too precious to waste. But they were clever. They knew the wind could steal embers that sparks could leap and take a home with them. So they built traps, small graves of ash and earth that held the heart of the fire through the night. They called it the ember bed. Before sleep, they raked the glowing coals deep into the ashes, packed them with damp sawdust bits of moss or animal dung. The heat sank down, hidden but alive. By dawn, the fire looked dead, just cold gray dust in the half-light. But when the breath of morning came, one soft blow, one stir of a stick, and it returned. The tribes understood that not all warmth has to blaze to survive. Sometimes the quietest glow burns the longest. In that silence, they learned patience, how to keep something alive without holding it too tight. Modern tests show the method works. A well-made ember trap can keep coals warm for more than 12 hours, even when the air outside freezes solid. It's a small miracle of physics and instinct born from necessity and respect. Because fire, like life, doesn't always shout. It whispers. It waits. It breathes slow beneath the surface until someone believes in it enough to wake it. And maybe that's the secret of their survival. Not power, not light, but faith in the ember that still breathes beneath the ash. Warmth. Reborn. When the fire went out at midnight, the plains froze under a wide and endless sky. No trees, no wood to burn, just wind, snow, and silence. For the Lakota, that kind of night was common and deadly. Temperatures could drop below minus 30 degrees Celsius, and even the stars seemed cold. But they had something the cold could never take: the hide of the buffalo and the wisdom to use it. They called it the cocoon, layers of thick hide folded tight, stitched by bone needle and sinew. Inside, a man could crawl in and seal the world away. Only a small slit near the mouth for breath. The rest, darkness, weight, and warmth. The air trapped between hides became a living insulation thicker than 5 modern blankets. It smelled of earth smoke and animal spirit, the kind of warmth you don't just feel, you remember. The Lakota had no heater, no spark left from the fire, and no light. Yet their breath made its own rhythm, slow, steady, rising as the wind howled across the plains. They learned that warmth wasn't just something you built, it was something you became. Tests on preserved buffalo hide show what they already knew, that a single skin can block wind and retain heat like wool and leather combined. Nature had given them the perfect armor, but it took generations of observation to learn how to wear it right. They didn't fight the storm, they listened to it. They shaped their survival from its sound. And maybe that's what we've lost, that kind of hearing, that quiet understanding of wind hide and heartbeat. When the world froze, they didn't curse the dark. They folded into it and waited. Warmth. Reborn. When the fire went out at midnight, the tent turned cold fast, the kind of cold that slips under your skin and waits there. The Ojibwe and the Iroquois knew that feeling well. They had seen the heat vanish from the air within minutes. One breath warm, the next sharp as glass. But they also knew something the cold-deadened stone remembers. Before sleep, they gathered rocks from the riverbank round, and heavy blackened from many nights of fire. They placed them near the flames until they glowed faintly red, until they hummed with quiet life. Then, with careful hands, they rolled the stones into hides, wrapped them tight, and carried them into the lodge. Each stone became a small sun, slow and steady, giving off warmth long after the fire itself had died. In the deep night, when temperatures outside dropped below minus 30 degrees Celsius, that heat spread out, not hot but patient. A circle of stones could hold warmth for 6 hours, enough to see dawn. The cold could press, could whisper, could try to take, but it could not win. They called it the night's fire. A trick of physics, yes, but also of faith. The belief that even after the light fades, something can still hold its memory. Archaeologists later found cracked stones blackened from centuries of use, proof of this quiet wisdom. And perhaps that's the lesson they left behind, that true warmth isn't loud or bright. It's the kind that stays, the kind that endures in silence, like an ember under ash, or a heart that refuses to stop beating. Warmth, reborn. When the fire went out at midnight, the warmth didn't vanish. It lingered trapped in the air, in the smoke, in the breath of those who slept close together. The northern tribes understood this quiet science long before the word insulation was ever written. When the wind outside screamed across the plains, they turned their homes into instruments of heat. Their shelters were shaped like cones, not by chance, but by memory. The smoke didn't escape. It rose, swirled, and softened near the peak, where hides met poles. They built a small smoke pocket near the top, a chamber that caught the warm air, held it, and let it fall again, like a slow breath returning home. One side of the cone opened slightly, always away from the wind, so the draft would pull fresh air in without letting the heat flee. Measurements done centuries later proved their instinct right. These lodges kept up to 70% more warmth than open shelters, even when temperatures dropped below minus 30 degrees Celsius. The air above the sleepers became a living blanket, a rhythm of smoke moisture and warmth circling like breath in a chest. They didn't have blueprints, no thermometers, just the memory of nights too cold to forget, and the patience to listen to the wind. When the larch poles creaked, when the hide walls breathed, they knew how to adjust, tilt the flap, shift the angle, and warmth returned. They called it shelter, but it was really balance, between smoke and sky, between chaos and calm, between knowledge and instinct. They didn't study engineering, they lived it one frozen night at a time. Warmth, reborn, reborn. When the fire went out at midnight, silence took over, the kind that makes the heart beat louder, that makes every breath feel like frost. Out on the frozen plain, when temperatures dropped below minus 30 degrees Celsius, fear was colder than the air itself. But for the Navajo, fear was never fought with fire, it was met with spirit. They believed the ancestors stayed close, sitting in the dark beside them. The old ones who had crossed the winters before watching, guarding, whispering through the wind. So before they lay down to sleep, they didn't pray for survival. They gave thanks. They spoke softly to the night, to the unseen warmth that breathed around them. To them, the fire didn't end when the flames died. It simply moved from wood to heart. That quiet faith did more than calm the mind. It changed the body. Anthropologists studying remote tribes noted lower stress and slower breathing during night rest rituals, proof that belief itself can slow the pulse, conserve heat, and help the body endure the cold. The Navajo didn't need numbers to tell them that. They could feel it. And in that stillness, their warmth wasn't measured in degrees, but in belonging. A circle of people, a circle of spirits, and a circle of breath that refused to break. The snow could whisper, the wind could try to take, but inside, there was still fire. They didn't see darkness as an enemy. They saw it as company, as memory, as proof that warmth doesn't come from flame alone. Because when the world goes cold and every ember fades, what's left is belief. Just warmth, nothing else. When dawn broke, the world was gray again. Smoke rose in slow curls from the ashes, soft like memory breathing. The cold hadn't vanished, but it had been tamed. They didn't wait for fire to save them. They learned to live with the dark. Through the night, when temperatures fell below minus 30 degrees Celsius, warmth came not from flames, but from earth, from stone, from one another, from the quiet belief that light still lived inside. The old ones taught this truth: fire outside burns fast, fire within endures. And now we, surrounded by light, are colder than they ever were. We have heat at the push of a button, yet hearts that forget how to share it. So when the fire dies and silence returns, remember them, the tribes who faced the night and found warmth where none remained. Because when the fire goes out, the heart is the last ember.